Well, I am very thankful for that introduction. I'm also very grateful to be here with you this morning. I am also grateful that they're feeding you. Your brain is the hungriest organ in your body, consuming more than 20% of the total energy that your body consumes every day. And I hope that we're going to exercise your brain this morning. That's my intention. It's quite an extraordinary organ, made up of more than 1 trillion cells, 86 billion neurons, all connected together via ganglia and synapses, each neuron connected to more than 10,000 other neurons. Incredibly complex network, capable of processing more than 11 million bits of data in any given moment. Think about that, 11 million bits of data. The vast majority of that, though, is being processed beyond your awareness and beyond your control. A lot of it's to do with managing to just simply keep you alive. Right now, you're ingesting food. You're metabolising it, you're producing energy. That's enabling you to keep your heart rate going. It enables you to manage your body temperature, so homeostasis keeps you at a relatively even temperature. And even your ability to sit upright right now without having to think about it. Have you ever wondered at the extraordinary nature of that? You don't have to think about it, your body just does it. It's called proprioception. All of these functions are fundamentally designed to keep you alive. A lot of functions in your brain, processed beyond your awareness and beyond your control, are also designed to help you survive. A vast amount of that is designed to help you survive in a world which is full of dangers and threats. And in the world of Homo sapiens, in the world that we occupy, a lot of those dangers and threats can come from other people. Ever since the days of hunter-gatherers, our brain evolved to make very rapid assessments of each other. The moment that I walked onto this stage, outside of your control and outside of your awareness, in less than a second, your brain was making an assessment of me. It was answering 2 questions that it needed to answer. The first is, what are my intentions? Based on very limited data, it's asking the question, what are my intentions towards you? Because if they're hostile, you're going to want to protect yourself. The second question, which is answered in less than a second, is the question of, is he competent enough to carry out his intentions? So if my intentions were hostile and I appeared competent enough to do that, then again, you'd want to probably engage in a fight, flight, freeze response. This is all happening in less than a second. These assessments of other people are fundamentally leading our brain to make a decision about, can I trust this person? Can I trust their intentions? Can I trust their competence? In other words, do I want to hang around with this person and engage with them? Or might I want to protect myself from them? And if you think about the work of leadership, the critical prerequisite is the other person is willing to be open to you as a leader, is going to be willing to want to engage with you as a person. Do they trust you? And this is all happening in less than a second. So I've learned to be very clear about my intentions. Coming into this room, I thought very carefully about why do I want to be here? Because this can't be about me. It has to be about you. It has to be about helping you lead well, because I'm sure you have a dream, a vision, an aspiration, a goal, a purpose, something that you care about, or people that you care about. People around you, they might be in your family, they might be in your team, they might be in your company, they might be in your community, they might be in your country. People that you care about and for which your leadership needs to be at its best if you're to achieve that dream, that aspiration, that vision, or if you're to serve the interests of those people that you care about. And that's why we take up leadership. That's why we take up leadership and why we need to do it well and why I'd like to help you do it well. And how am I going to do that? Well, I hope to distill 35 years of being interested in this topic and more than 55 years of living on this planet into 3 key things that I'd like to share with you. 3 insights, if you like. The first is that there are 2 characteristics that all extraordinary leaders possess that allow them to move beyond ordinary ho-hum, garden variety, everyday average leadership into something else. The second is that those 2 characteristics allow those leaders to not just be in the world, but to create the world, to change the world, or at least the world that's around them. If you want to be a change maker, you have to lead. And then the third insight is that in order to change the world, though, we have to change ourselves. And the work is not necessarily out there. The work is in here. And my intention this morning is to bring that to life for you. But if we are going to do this work, we probably need to warm up for it. And I know that many of you right now are connected to your food. You're enjoying sitting there, listening to someone. You're not having to do much. I apologise, that's about to change. So this is a simple activity, and in a moment, all I'm going to ask you to do is to stand up and to find someone at your table that you can partner with. Once you've found that person, just stand opposite them. And I know that some of you, I can see it in your faces, are going, oh, I really just wanted to sit for a while. This won't last long. So, can I ask everyone to stand up, find a partner, just stand opposite. Okay, are you ready for your instructions? I notice some people are already starting to kick each other and muck around. I want you to stand opposite that person. I literally face them, about 1 metre apart. And in a moment, I'm going to give you a task. And it's a leadership task. Because the work of leadership is to influence and mobilise other people. By definition, that's what leadership is. And I want you to imagine there's a white line that bisects the space between the two of you, as if you were standing on opposite sides of a road. This is going to be interesting to work in a group of 3. Maybe if you're in a group of 3, maybe one person can be the observer. So, the negotiations continue. Money's already being changed hands at the moment. Stand opposite the person, imagine a white line bisecting the space between you, and in a moment I'm going to ask you to complete a task. The only objective you have is to complete this task. And your goal is to be successful. Your goal is to exercise leadership. The only way that you can achieve your goal successfully in a moment, not just yet, is to get the other person to cross the white line. The objective is to get the other person to cross the white line, to stand on the side of the white line on which you currently stand. Now, you can use whatever resources are at your disposal, provided they are ethical and legal. You will only have 20 seconds to achieve your objective. And your time starts now. Ten seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's time. Just a quick show of hands. Who managed to get the other person to cross the white line? Okay. Who was in a partnership where one person won, by my definition, in that the other person crossed the white line, and one person lost? Just a quick show of hands. That's okay. You're allowed to declare it. So no one... Who did the old switcheroo, where you decided to both cross the white line, even if it was tentative at first? There is one outcome. There is one outcome which is a win-win. Any other outcome typically is not a win-win outcome. Thank you very much for engaging in that activity. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that the choice that you just made then in how to engage with that activity was shaped by a lifetime of experiences. The thinking that was going on, that was presented to you as the options, may have been shaped by a whole life of experiences through childhood and adolescence and early adulthood. And all of us have been shaped by our childhoods and our adolescence. I have. The way that I think about leadership today was incredibly impacted by an experience that I had when I was 15 years old. My very first job I had for 3 hours. I was employed as a casual in a supermarket. On that very first shift, I was put up in the manager's office. I watched a bunch of videos. I was inducted into the things that I needed to know. And then the store manager took me on a tour of the store. We walked from one end to the other. He was a very tall fellow. I remember this very clearly, with a big voice. And for some reason, by the time we got to the fruit and vegetable department, he was angry not agitated, angry. And I remember it so clearly. He stood over someone whom I assume to this day was the department manager, yelling at him with spittle coming out of his mouth. It was awful. What was more awful was the look on that department manager's face, this look of embarrassment and shame. And I could see it, fear. And the store manager picked up an eggplant, threw it to the ground, and the pulp just splattered everywhere. These are moments that are seared into my memory. I quit at the end of that shift. I'd been bullied in primary school, and I have an abhorrence for that kind of behaviour. And there was no way I was going to work there. My father, he was aghast. He thought I'd never, ever get another job anywhere else. But fortunately, within 2 weeks, I was employed at an apartment store, Myer, like Grace Brothers. Now, as a 15-year-old boy, there are many departments that would be ideally the ones that you'd want to be employed in. I didn't get any of those. I was employed in the lighting department. Now, the lighting department on most department stores is up on the 4th floor in the very furthest corner, and no one ever goes there. It's boring, not a lot happening, and that's the experience I had for a number of weeks. The twilight zone. Until we got a new manager. His name was John LeVay, freshly minted out of management school. And he was optimistic, and he was positive, and he was energetic, and he connected with us, and he started to understand the experience we were having, and he wasn't going to stand for this. Sales needed to improve. We needed to create a more interesting experience for the customer, and we as team members needed to do something that was meaningful and enjoy the work that we do. So he hatched a plan, and he got all of us involved in it. And I was a casual. I worked 2 shifts a week, but he still took the time to learn enough about me to know that I was good with my hands. So my job was to take 1980s, you've got to remember this is, 1980s spotlights, chrome and gold, and put them on easels that we would place out on the walkways so that if a customer happened to come by, they'd get interested and they might want to come in. And then once they were in there, we'd shower them with service. And the plan went on for a few weeks. And one day at the beginning of my shift, John said, "Can I have a chat with you?" And he took me aside and he had in his hand what he explained was the trading reports. And he'd underlined all of the products that we'd decided to promote. And he explained to me there was a column which indicated whether sales had gone up or gone down on previous weeks and months. And then he asked me to tell him whether sales had gone up and down for the products that he'd underlined. And I said, yeah, that one's gone up 30%, 38%, 70%, 160%. And he turned to me and he looked me in the eye and he said, yeah, that's because of the work that you and your teammates did. Thank you. And in that moment, as a 15-year-old, working in the lighting department, I felt pride. Something swelled, started growing within inside me. A sense that as an awkward, gawky teenage boy, that I could do something. I could contribute in a way, that I had something to offer. And that's an incredibly rich seed or thought to have. And in that moment, I think I started to intuit or understand that there is a vast difference between the different kinds of leadership that we can experience and the impact that it has. And that sparked a lifelong interest in leadership and the role that it can play, not just in my life, but in our lives and in the lives of the people that we care about, whether they be our children, our friends, our family, our community, our colleagues and our workmates. And in that search over the last 35 years to understand, well, what's this difference between ordinary and extraordinary, and what makes the difference, and how can we access it, and how can we access it in a way which is simple enough for any of us to understand and do something with? I discovered something, that across the more than 50 years of literature around leadership, there is this golden thread that runs through it. And the golden thread talks about two things that make the difference between ordinary and extraordinary, 2 characteristics that extraordinary leaders possess. And these are the 2 big ingredients. The first is warmth. What is warmth? It's the qualities and the behaviours that allow us to connect with people and allow us to sense and respond to the world with and through others. The second is strength. They are the qualities and behaviours that make things happen, that allow us to exert our influence on the world and the people around us. Warmth and strength. Various words have been used for these 2 things over the years. Love and power. Communion and competence. Whatever the words are, they mean fundamentally the same thing. And I want to give you some examples of warmth. This is, if you see these behaviours or experience these behaviours in others, there is warmth in the room with you. So if the other person makes eye contact or smiling, they say, you are here, you exist, you matter. If they share their thoughts and feelings, or if they show empathy or compassion, they're saying what you feel and what you think really matters. If they invite you to share what they know, think or feel, or if they involve others in conversations, meeting and decisions, they're saying these other people in this room with me have something to offer. It's not just about me, it's about us. And then there are behaviours around acknowledging others and even adjusting your position in response to others, which you're fundamentally saying, I don't have all the answers. You have something here that helps us make better sense of the world. Strength. What does strength look like? And it comes in all different sorts of forms, but here's some examples. So sometimes it's just simple body language, what we do, standing up straight, speaking with a louder voice, which conveys a sense of confidence and competence, which is necessary for you to even be willing to listen to somebody. Or it may be that I communicate or share a view in an attempt to influence you, to get you to think differently, act differently. Or perhaps I just simply ask for what I want, or I argue a case because I think that what I have is an answer that would be helpful to us, or a way forward that would be helpful to us. Or I might take initiative and execute a plan, which is action. It makes something happen in the world. So we have warmth and we have strength. But this is how most people think about it. More than 70% of people think about these two things as opposites. That to exercise warmth, I have to have less strength. And if I want to dial up my warmth, I have to dial down my strength. Or to have more strength, I have to dial down my warmth. That these two things are opposites. It's an either-or proposition. And a lot of people's minds are wired that way, more than 70%. However, that's not true. Scientifically, empirically, and actually, that is not true. The truth is that strength and warmth are two different characteristics altogether. So they have their own opposites. The opposite of warmth is to be disconnected. The opposite of us, warmth, is me. And the opposite of strength, which is making things happen, is weakness or passiveness. If strength is about making things happen, the opposite of that is just letting things happen. Okay. Now, if this is true, and this is where the magic happens, then we have not just two choices, to be strong or to be warm, we have four choices as individuals and as leaders. We can show up as strong and warm. We can show up as passive and disconnected, or we could show up as passive and warm, or strong and disconnected. If we simply overlay these continuums, there are four options available to us, not just two. So what does it look like when we have these different patterns? And what difference does it make to leadership and what we're able to achieve? Well, simply put, only one of those patterns is extraordinary. And I say it's extraordinary because what it does is it's characterised by the presence of both characteristics, both strength and warmth. It's also reflected in less than 30% of the leadership interactions that we're likely to see around us. Now, you might be lucky. You might have a lot of interactions in your life, more than 30% that represent both strength and warmth, but on average, this is what we see around us. This is what we're likely to experience. And it does what Professor Charles Handy calls the genius of and, where we take two seemingly opposite things and put them together in the same space and time. And the evidence is clear. It produces superior engagement and superior results. What does it look like? What does strength and warmth look like together? And we call it catalyst leadership. Catalyst leadership because a catalyst, if you remember your high school's chemistry, is something that you add to otherwise inert substances and it releases energy and transforms them. And that's what catalyst leaders do. And they do this by focusing on tasks and relationships. And not results or people, but results through people. And the sorts of behaviours is their behaviours are both warm and strong, receptive and assertive. Receptive, willing to listen. Assertive, willing to state a view. Empowering and holding accountable. So if I empower other people and give them the latitude to do what needs to be done, but also hold them accountable for producing a result, that is both warm and strong. If I'm empathetic and I act with resolve, I can have compassion and empathy for other people, acknowledge their feelings, yet still ask them to do what might be difficult things. Jacinda Ardern is such a wonderful example of this at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I don't know if any of you are from New Zealand, any Kiwis in the audience, or watched with interest how she did it. But I remember this one press conference, and she did this consistently, where she was so clear. She said to people, I know this is going to be very hard for you. I know that I'm asking you to not be with your family, potentially, to not be with your friends, not be with the people you care about, and that's tough. But we need to do this. We need to do this and do these difficult things if we're to keep people safe. That's what we believed at that point in time. It's a beautiful example of both warmth and strength. Seeking feedback, because what you have to offer might be helpful to me, and giving feedback, because I can help you grow and develop and achieve more by giving feedback. Acts with humility and takes up authority, so I don't have all the answers, yet nonetheless I will take up my role in the system because that is what is needed. Gives choice and provides boundaries. The warmth is giving choice, the strength is making sure that people are clear about what are the boundaries in which we operate. So you can start to see that this is a pattern of behaviour which combines both warmth and strength in the same space and time. What does it look like, though, when we have the other patterns of leadership? We call them the 3 ordinary patterns of leadership. And they're characterised by an absence of strength or warmth or both. Sorry, audio-visual, can I just have the notes a little bit bigger, please? I'm noticing I'm turning away, and that's changing the volume, which may not create a pleasant experience for you. So it's characterised by both warmth and strength, or an absence of strength and warmth, or both. So this is where approximately 70% of leadership interactions reflect this. Thank you. It's called the tyranny of awe. Professor Charles Handy talked about the same thing, where we trade off one thing against the other, and we're held by the awe, and it limits our thinking and it limits our effectiveness. And it produces inferior engagement and results. The first pattern is control. Control is characterised by things like task before people, and the signature of it is also results through our own efforts. And the sorts of behaviours that we might see are things like micromanaging and perfectionistic. Has to be done my way. Winning at each other's expense. Telling is the default. So my way is the only way, and I'm going to let you know that this is the way it's going to happen. Closed to other views. Not an open system, not listening, not receptive, not learning. And aggressive when challenged and biased towards critical feedback. So if you tell it this behaviour that it's wrong, it'll let you know why you're wrong, and it'll become aggressive in response. Now, you may have experienced this kind of behaviour before. If you've experienced it from someone who was meant to be leading you, you know what it feels like. You know, it can produce results, but it's not particularly empowering. It's not particularly engaging. It can also feel quite limiting. Here's another pattern, the relate pattern. This is high warmth, low strength. It's people before results and relationships over tasks. So the interest in this behaviour is about us, but it's principally about us, and it often trades off results or outcomes to preserve the us. And the sorts of behaviours that you might see are the sorts of behaviours that are all about connecting. They're all about everything being okay between us. But not necessarily an ability to hold people accountable or handle conflict or deal with tension. As soon as the tension builds, there's a sense that I'm at risk of not being liked here, then the behaviour asserts itself to just focus on the relationships, gives up the task, gives up the getting things done. This is another ordinary pattern of leadership. And the third ordinary pattern of leadership, and I think it's probably at times the least helpful, is the absence of both strength and warmth. And we call it the protect pattern. And it's a low trust pattern. It limits risk. And the sorts of behaviours that indicate that you're present with this is it doesn't give you much. You don't know what it's thinking. You don't know what it's feeling. It's all often quite resistant. It's protective. It doesn't want to engage with change because change is risky. And if you put an argument forward for something, it'll tell you why you're wrong, but it won't give you an alternative that would actually allow us to succeed and move forward. It just resists. Now, for anyone who's interested in driving or mobilising people around change, you know what this feels like when you encounter it. It's not particularly energising. And that's probably the most helpful lens through which we could think about these different patterns of behaviour. If leadership is about influencing and mobilising other people, What is the impact of each of these patterns of leadership on our ability to influence and mobilise and energise and engage and release the energy of and the potential of other people and their contribution and their commitment? That's the work of leadership. Well, it just so happens quite a bit of research has been done around this. If you think about other people's response to you as a leader or your leadership agenda, there's a range of responses they might have. At one end, they might support your agenda. They might go out of their way to support you and your agenda. The next point back is they might not go out of their way to support you and your agenda, but they will support you if it's convenient to them. And then we move into a negative state where people are not actively seeking to do you harm, but what they are doing is they probably won't push you out of the way of the bus if it's coming towards you. And so that your leadership, you or your leadership agenda may come to harm. And then the end one is where people will actively go out of their way to harm you, to harm your agenda or to harm you. So what impact do the 4 different patterns of leadership have on people's willingness to do that? Well, the science is pretty clear. That strong but warm leadership only activates, at best, passive support. But we can also get responses that include active harm. I think this is what happened to Donald Trump. We'd characterise his leadership as strong but not warm. In fact, he used the word strength repeatedly over and over and over. And what happened is there was a proportion of the American population who might not typically vote, who I think were activated to go and vote and do him harm, ensure that he didn't get in at the next election. And that's that set of behaviours which are down the other end. And that can be toxic to what you're trying to achieve, your success as a leader. What happens when we have another combination, which is high warmth but low strength? Sure, we get active engagement because people like you and they want to support you. But there's this interesting phenomena where people may also not help if your agenda or you as a leader are at risk. The third pattern, which is protect, produces nothing positive in terms of support. And the final pattern, strength and warmth, only produces positive outcomes. So if your simple goal as a leader is to mobilise other people, activate them, energise them, build support for you and the agenda that you're running with, strength and warmth is going to generate significantly more support than any other pattern. And here's the data. Control, protect, relate tendencies, those ordinary patterns of leadership, they have an inverse relationship to the effectiveness of our leadership. A small amount of them is helpful, but too much of them, our leadership becomes quite ineffective. But the reverse is true of strength and warmth together. It's a very clear correlation between that pattern of leadership and our effectiveness as leaders. So the question for you is this. And this is a moment where I'm going to ask you to work in pairs, maybe the person that you worked with before, and to think about your own leadership. I don't intend today to just ask you to contemplate things and be entertained. I want you to think about, what does this mean for me? Because we all need to do the work. So we'll start here. So the conversation is, over the next 10 minutes, is what's my tendency, warmth or strength, and how does it show up in my leadership? Feel free.